What's up, everybody? D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla vs Kong discussion video. This one's going to be interesting. It is. It's not something I've done before. This is kind of a story pitch, but it's also, I don't know, it's just me telling a version of a story, right? In today's video, I am going to be, I don't know, pitching, is that the right term? I'm going to be pitching my version of Godzilla vs Kong, or at least I'm going to be pitching Act 1 to you. Now, the reason I'm doing this is just simply because I thought it'd be fun. Godzilla vs Kong is one of those movies that seems very difficult to make. There's a lot of moving parts that have been set in motion that it's going to be difficult to work with. So I wanted to make my version of what would I do if I were to make Godzilla vs Kong, and so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I didn't do this for Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I didn't do this for Kong Skull Island, but Godzilla vs Kong is something that is so near and dear to my heart, King Kong vs Godzilla being my favorite movie of all time. I thought it'd be fun to talk about what I would do in a theoretical remake, or I guess it's not really a remake. My version isn't a remake either. My version is very much not connected to that original version. There is nothing to do with advertising in mine. Okay, you guys already know if you've been watching the channel that before Godzilla King of the Monsters came out, I had a pretty simple idea for Godzilla vs Kong. My idea for the movie, which would be a sequel to Godzilla 2014 and Kong Skull Island, was easy. It was nice and simple, and the version I wound up with is not nice and simple, but my original version was, my Godzilla vs Kong would feature Godzilla in need of nuclear energy. He'd be destroying nuclear power plants around the world in order to gain energy. He'd have crossed the line into becoming more of a villain than a hero, so he would have changed from how he was presented in Godzilla 2014. Kong would then be forced off of his island. He'd be forced to come after Godzilla. The two of them would fight. During their battle, Godzilla would realize the extent to his damage. He'd realize everything that he's caused, and this would transition him into being more of a good guy again. So that was my very general, this is how I would handle the movie idea. And when I pitch the movie here, you're gonna see I've maintained a fair amount of those ideas. Not a lot, but I've tried my best to keep it as simple and close to that easy idea as I could. You know, in that original idea, I didn't know how Godzilla and Kong would meet. I don't know why they're gonna fight. Why does Kong leave the island? I don't know. It was just a vague story. This one is gonna be pretty in-depth, but at the same time, really, I only fleshed out the monster storyline. The human storyline I've left quite open because I don't really know how to handle a lot of these characters. And here's why. The story that I'm gonna be pitching to you is gonna be me following up Godzilla King of the Monsters, keeping a ton of parameters in mind. Here are the parameters I have restricted myself to in telling this Godzilla vs Kong story. The events of the Monsterverse have all happened up to this point. I am not allowed to retcon anything. This includes elements from the comics and novelization, so I'm going to try and keep everything from the novelizations and comics that I can. That means that, yeah, bioengineering with Titan DNA has occurred, as we learned it did in the Godzilla King of the Monsters novelization, and that will play a part in this, although that's just more for the people who like the expanded canon. They can go, oh yeah, that's already occurred. Other things that have already happened that are going to play into this film. The oxygen destroyer went off in Godzilla King of the Monsters, nearly killed Godzilla, and he knows it. He knows humanity is the one that fired that device. However, I know a lot of people are going to go, oh, there's D-Man making a scapegoat for Godzilla to become evil. Not the case. My version of the story also has Godzilla well aware that Serizawa is the one who saved his life. He's well aware and grateful to Serizawa. The coexistence is something that Godzilla still wants to strive towards. As we're going to see in this story, that might not be something he can achieve, but that's what he wants to do at the start of the story. Other things that have happened. Godzilla's temple has been destroyed and his Hollow Earth entry point has been blocked off. He has no way to get back down there. The only Hollow Earth entry point in my version of Godzilla vs Kong that is accessible at the moment is the one on Skull Island. So that is where the drama is going to come in. Houston Brooks and his son Aaron Brooks will return, and Aaron Brooks will play a major part in the beginning of the movie. However, they're not main characters. That way you don't have to be totally in line with the expanded canon. You don't really need to know everything that's gone on in the Monsterverse to get this movie. Try to make sure that this can stand on its own for people who haven't read the comics, but you do still need to have seen the previous movies to get this film. Also, Dr. Chen's ending line to Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla's on our side for now, is relevant in this version of the story. Again, I can already feel that people are anticipating they know where my version of the story is going to go. Godzilla's going to become evil the way you originally had pitched it. When I go through the story, you'll see that I tried to make sure that's not the case because I don't want Godzilla to become evil because that takes away from Serizawa. Like, why did Serizawa sacrifice himself if Godzilla's just going to wind up evil. So I made sure to be conscious of that when writing this new version of the story. The public knows about the Titans, they know about Skull Island. Godzilla's been keeping all the Titans in check around the world. He's kind of a superhero, you know, he's Godzilla. Titan products have become very valuable, the black market is soaring, seismic disturbances and instability on Skull Island have still occurred. New Titans are still being drawn to Skull Island, where Monarch is prepping to explore the Hollow Earth. However, we will see in this version of the story there are a lot of complications that stop them from doing so. There are rumors that there is a mechanical Titan in construction. Yeah, don't worry, I didn't forget about that one. Mothra's egg has been discovered. Once again, that's something that is going to be very briefly touched in this version of the story, so don't expect Mothra to be a main character or even a character. The public is aware of the cave painting showing Godzilla and Kong fighting. That is pretty important in this version of the story. Ghidorah's head has been obtained by Alan Jonah. Again, pretty important. Alan Jonah, whether he returns or not, I tried to leave it so where he could return in this version of the story. I do have it so that he's there, but I'm also aware that he's not on the cast list for the movie yet, so I tried to write around that, so he doesn't need to be the one doing this stuff. There's just going to be people acting on his behalf. I've also, going off of that, tried to keep the existing cast for the movie as it is. I've tried to keep all the characters that we know are going to be in the movie. So Julian Dennison is going to be in this, Alexander Skarsgård, Isa Gonzalez is going to be in this. There's going to be other characters that I don't mention in this version of the story that would still wind up being in this. Other actors who we know are going to be in Godzilla vs. Kong that I don't mention in this version of the story, but if this were made into a movie, they would be there because I tried to make sure that everything we know about the movie so far is still happening. So everything we have so far, the plot that we have been given so far, everything that we have is going to be worked into this, which is where I came into a lot of difficulties. It was like, how do I write a version of the story that gets all of this stuff to happen? How do I write this to where everything can go the way it needs to go based on what we know? So I do give minor spoilers here, minor. Again, nothing big, only official reveals being covered here. It's minor spoilers, but I try to keep everything in mind. And again, I'm trying to follow up on all of these different plot lines set up in Godzilla King of the Monsters. That means the mechanical Titan has to be followed up on, along with Ghidorah's head has to be followed up on. Two things that if it were up to me would not be followed up on, but Michael Dougherty did say that the King of the Monsters end credit stuff will be followed through in Godzilla vs. Kong, so I went, hey, I guess I'm gonna try and follow through with that stuff. The other thing I'd like to say before we get into it, I know I'm making this intro so long. The other thing I'd like to say is that, yes, I know other people have done their versions of the story online before. I tried not to listen to them. I tried not to take influence from them. I wanted this to be my version of the story. However, there are some overlaps, specifically the intro to my story does overlap with at least ETN. I know his version of the story also has this. I did write this on my own. I didn't get this from him, so that just means great minds think alike. We both thought this would be very important to the story, so we both put this in there. Which leads to my version of Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm gonna take you up until, I don't know, maybe this would be 15 minutes into the movie max. My movie's kind of structured the way Godzilla 2014 structured, and so that's the way we're going here. That might scare a lot of people. Don't worry, it's a lot more kaiju heavy than Godzilla 2014 was. A lot more. So my movie opens up with Ghidorah bursting out of the water and landing on the volcano. We are picking up mid-events of Godzilla. We are straight up just seeing that footage again. It's a bit of a King Kong Lives style opening, the way that movie opens with the montage or the shortened version of the ending of the last film. It's kind of like that. So that's how I picture it, is we are seeing Godzilla King of the Monsters again, just from a different perspective. So again, Ghidorah rises up out of the water, lands on the volcano, regenerates his head, does his alpha call. We rewatch the mass awakening scene happen. We will learn either during this or later. I don't know how I want to do this. I don't know if I want it to be exposition that we find out later, or if it's something that we see during this sequence, but we learn in this movie, in this version of the story, Monarch was able to kill at least one Titan with their failsafes, and they were able to contain a few more and prevent major damage from happening. Because I know in the Godzilla King of the Monsters movie and novelization, you watch it and you go, wait a minute, didn't Monarch have failsafes in place to protect against this exact thing happening? They were so unsuccessful in stopping any of it. I wanted to make Monarch seem a little more competent, and I wanted to give the public a reason to still have trust in Monarch, which is why I made it so that Monarch was able to kill at least one Titan and contain a few more, so that Monarch is still on their game and that they are still serving a purpose. We then transition into Skull Island, where the alpha call is heard, and not yet. I mean, we pick up and we watch the events of the novelization play out. So we're gonna see Kong going about his business. He's gonna check up on the Iwis. He knows humans and Titans shouldn't be forced to coexist, which is why he wants to protect the Iwis from the outside world. That's actually borrowed from the commentary from Kong Skull Island. Jordan Vogt Roberts says that that's one of Kong's motivations, is that he knows that humans and Titans should not be forced to coexist. That's something I wanted to keep here as well. Kong then observes the Monarch facility. This isn't in the novelization realization, but I think it's very important. He observes the Monarch facility on the island, and he's quite suspicious of it. There's a lot of activity going on with it, and he's suspicious of it. So he knows that there's something weird going on there, but he has an instinct to protect human life, so he's not going to do anything about it. He then continues to patrol his island at peace. Ghidorah's call reaches the island. Kong hears it and immediately gets on edge. After a few seconds, the ground starts to rumble, an earthquake strikes, and the island goes into chaos. Kong rushes to the boneyard because he knows something is about to go down. This is important because the boneyard was established as the home of the Skullcrawlers in Skull Island, The Birth of Kong comic book, so he's headed to this specific point because he knows that's where the Skullcrawlers live. That's mainly where they originate from on the island. So he's going to the boneyard to make sure that he can find out what's going on. And he knows that the Hollow Earth vents, they're like a second priority to him. So the thing we see him patrolling in Kong Skull Island, that's second on the list of priorities. The boneyard is number one because the boneyard is the biggest source of Skullcrawler activity. In the boneyard, hundreds of Skullcrawlers rise up from the ground. The ground becomes unstable and slowly collapses downward. A ton of Skullcrawlers just flood out. Kong looks around, he's panicked, and he roars. So he gets pretty pissed off when he sees all the Skullcrawlers rising up. He roars, and that brings us to a title card, Godzilla vs. Kong. We pick up immediately after this, Aaron Brooks, the head of Outpost 33, so he's still on the island. I'm just trying to continue the story that he had going on in Skull Island, The Birth of Kong. He's on the phone with his father, Houston Brooks. They are freaking out. They're like, oh god, we gotta get, everything's going bad here. They're trying to evacuate Skull Island. The flora fauna on the island, I don't necessarily think that Skullcrawlers and all of the creatures on Skull Island, I don't know if they qualify as titans, so I'm just gonna call them the flora fauna. The flora fauna on the island have gone crazy. They're killing everybody. Kong is doing his best to contain the mess. He's trying to keep them away from the Iwi village. He's very focused on protecting the Iwi village. He's not as worried about Monarch, who is basically being slaughtered by all the creatures on the island. Outpost 33 is abandoned. Aaron Brooks takes a squad into the Iwi village. He tries to get a whole bunch of them onto the Osprey so that they can leave, but they refuse, so he leaves. Skull Island is temporarily evacuated, but the Iwi are left on the island because they refuse to go. We then see a news report that fills us in on a bit of exposition as to what's happened with Godzilla following the events of Godzilla King of the Monsters. Godzilla has fought a bunch of the Titans off the mainland and into the ocean, so I think the ones that were there bowing to him, they wouldn't really have to fight him, but he's gotten those ones out of the way. He's gotten them out of the mainland and they're back in the ocean now. We see some footage of this, like I said, but it's not like a full fleshed out action sequence, trying to be a little budget conscious here. So Behemoth and Scylla take off, they head out into the ocean, and then we see a little bit of footage of Godzilla chasing Titans towards Skull Island in the ocean, and that's what the news report fills us in on. Although Godzilla never makes landfall on the island during this opening, Behemoth and a Muto or some other Titan, they do make landfall. That's how this whole thing comes to an end. They both arrive on Skull Island. Maybe there's still some ospreys flying around. I don't know, that seems a little unrealistic for there to still be ospreys on the island after they've evacuated, but we cut to Skull Island, and the last thing we see is Kong covered in the blood of Skullcrawlers, watching the ocean as Behemoth and at least some other Titan make landfall on the island, and Kong looks angrier than he ever has before. That's the intro to my movie. We've had the title card already. At this point, we fade to black, and we're gonna get a 1 year later title card, which will bring us into the majority of the story. But that's the intro. That's our whole Philippines earthquake, Godzilla blowing up in the Pacific, Janjura power plant. Like I said, I tried to structure it similar to Godzilla 2014. That's how my movie kicks off. During all this, we do see Kong's new design, but we don't really get any context to it. We never get a clear idea of how tall he's become, but we can tell he's much, much bigger than he was in Kong Skull Island. He also now sports his beard, and he looks much more muscular and mean than he did in Kong Skull Island. Like I said, the intro fades out as Kong comes face to face with Behemoth and a Muto or some other monster. And that is the beginning to my version of Godzilla vs. Kong. Wanted to kick it off with a nice action scene that filled us in on everything that's been going on and sets up the rest of my story to come. And this is, like I said, quite the convoluted story because I tried to follow up so many different plot lines, and I tried to capitalize on everything that we know is going to happen, or I don't know if capitalize is the right word. I tried to make sure that I fulfilled everything we know is going to happen in the movie in my version of the movie. So that's the intro to my version of Godzilla vs. Kong. Let me know what you guys think of it down below. I'd be interested to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you like that idea? Do you like starting the movie out with Kong during the Mass Awakening and having Kong have to deal with the ramifications of all the Titans headed towards his island? I think that's a great place to start the story. It's a very good way to set up Kong's motivation moving forward, that's for sure. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man, out.